Thank you for staying with us. More than 150 people have died following a devastating flood in Mokwa. It's more than 3 days after the disaster, but despite promises made by government and emergency agencies, no food or relief materials have reached the victims. All of them have been forced to seek shelter, with relatives and several others are returning to their ruined homes in search of valuables. The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, had promised to set up a temporary camp at a local primary school, but that seems to be a long wait. Joining us for this conversation at the moment is our correspondent in Niger State, Chenemi Bami, to bring us up to speed with developments there. Good morning, Chenemi. Thank you for joining us. Quickly tell us what the situation is, especially with ensuring relief gets to those who are victims of this massive flood. There are reports that perhaps the damaged roads and the gullies are standing in between relief and the victims. Jeremy, can you unmute your device? All right, while we wait for Chenemi there, the visuals you are seeing is from Mokwa, the level of devastation, and that's also NEMA speaking with the people there. I believe that those are some of the persons who were transporters who are also trying to make their way around that route. But we see people digging there, trying to perhaps get some materials. Since relief materials haven't gotten to them, they are trying to do a makeshift shelter for themselves while they wait for government to do the needful. But the damage, as we can see, is quite devastating.
The damage is huge. And the one that really touched me was the number of little children involved that had lost their lives because of this. A good number of the people that passed because of this flood are children, less than 10, you know, quite so many of them. Right now, I am happy that NEMA is there, and their response was quite swift. The State Emergency Management team had also been there. It's just been like a 24-hour thing for both organizations. I just hope that they quickly find a solution to this, because there's a big threat of a disease outbreak, you know, in a situation like this. Everybody will be scrambling for one thing or the other. And when I see these guys digging to see if they'll find anything valuable, oh God, it gets to me.
It's sad.
Yeah, that's right. It just feels like a war zone, you know, looking at, you know, the level of devastation that had occurred in that place. And I don't understand what exactly that we need to do, because if you look at some buildings there that are still standing, one thing is they need to do some integrity test.
Yeah, but let's quickly now move over to our guest who is joining us via Zoom for this conversation. He is the Executive Director of Renewable Development Initiative, Philip Jakpor. Philip, good morning. Thank you for joining us. It's quite sad, the visuals we are getting from Niger State, the level of devastation as a result of flooding, even though there are those who said that perhaps one of the dams in the state, you know, bursts and then contributed to the level of damage that we are seeing. But what was your, perhaps, your state of mind looking at those pictures right now and also hearing the stories coming out of Niger State?
Good morning. I'd like to first of all commiserate with the people of Mokwa and then Niger State in general for this disaster, which I would say is avoidable. Immediately the news started circulating the first thing that came to me was, here we go again. In 2024, we had incidents like this. We had the Alao Dam collapse. We had back to 2012. It's been year in, year out, things that are avoidable. So it's unfortunate, and like I think I heard someone say, while the figures we are hearing is about 153 in terms of deaths, I think, what we are hearing from people on ground is quite different. The number could be as high as 250 or so. 3 bridges down, more than 3,000 persons affected, more than 500 households. So this is heart, breaking, because Niger State was one of the states that NIMET talked about in terms of high risk, when NIMET made the prediction about the heavy rains and then flooding. So some of these things could have been avoided. But unfortunately, like I said, here we go again. Last year we were at it. This year we are at it again. So it's unfortunate to hear this kind of story.
Okay. Niger State, especially Mokwa, has been designated a place prone to gully erosions. We also have Anambra State. We have quite a number of states in Nigeria, and successive administrations have been having financial interventions from international organizations and locally. With that scenario in mind, how do you feel that something like this should happen, especially after the meteorological report that says it's going to be real heavy rain in Niger State and some other states? Is it that we just sat down, crossed our legs, and waited to see if that forecast will come to pass? How does it paint us as a country?
I think you've painted the grim situation, what we have seen over and over again. We don't actually need international organizations to actually fund some of the things we are talking about. What will it have cost the state government if before now there had been serious warnings to people who live within, the perimeter of the Niger? And then there's this report. I think the state government has to substantiate it or debunk it. But what we are hearing is that it's possible with the quantum of waters we saw running, videos were circulating, that this could have involved even one of the dams. Don't forget, there's Jeba Dam there, there's a Shiroro, and there's a Kenji. And I think I read in the report that some officials from Jeba Dam visited some of these areas. So I think we need the state government to clarify why we had this level of, except those videos are fake, but I don't think they are. We saw the way the waters were moving. It doesn't paint the picture of, just rising waters moving, but almost like something happened somewhere, and then the waters were gushing and caused this level of devastation. So the state government has to come out to clear the air so that Nigerians are not, you don't confuse Nigerians, because this could have been avoided. So going back to the issue of, do you need international donors to be able to, do some of these basics, warning people, moving people, getting boots on ground? It will seem NEMA and their state counterparts are more interested in, and I've said this over and over again, relief distribution, which is all about sharing rice. I always say there's this obsession about sharing rice once these things happen. And I read in the reports today, in one of the, I think it's Mokwa Primary School or something like that, that officials of government brought or NEMA, I can't recall, brought in rice, took some pictures, and then disappeared with those things. So there's also the possibility that there are disaster capitalists who benefit from these things. And so they wait for these things to happen so that they move in, portray, some level of sympathy, and then it's an opportunity for some people to make money. Absolutely. If not, like I said, NIMET had warned. Why did they not take actions, proactive actions in getting people off those places? We have seen in the West, especially the US, where you have these typhoon, cyclone, year in, year out.
Tornado.
And for weeks, people have been warned that, look, this is going to happen, and they deploy coast guards, deploy policemen to ensure that people leave those places. So why is it not happening here? Since 2012, it has been a recurring decimal. Once this happens, you hear that NEMA has moved in. They are distributing relief to people. We want prevention, not relief. That's the issue. What we should be hearing from NEMA is the kind of choppers they've bought, the kind of speedboats they've gotten to be able to reach people who are inaccessible. But this issue of sharing of rice that we always, deploy when things like this happen, it happened with Allow Dam last year. Nobody is even asking the status of that dam. Has that dam been rebuilt? What is the status? Some weeks ago, we heard that nothing has happened there. So it shows people who are not serious or people who just want to profit from disaster. It's what is happening here.
That's right. In some of the things that you said a little earlier, were some damning allegations, especially on those who are supposed to provide some relief for these people. But this brings to the fore the concept or the issue of an ecological fund, which was established in 1981 to address, serious ecological problems, such as this. And then between 2012 and 2021, that's what is meant to do. And Nigeria voted or allocated 548 billion naira to this fund. Are there instances where, these funds have been inappropriately used or utilized to mitigate this funding? Is that why we are seeing destruction of this large scale?
Well, I think the starting point is, the National Assembly should look into that. But the starting point for me is that some of these disasters are completely avoidable and do not require ecological funds. Some of these things are completely avoidable because, like you have just said, since 2012, when we had, the colossal flooding across the country, the state governors have been talking, it's all about ecological funds, disburse money. What have they done with the little that they are voting in their states? That's the starting point. So let us see state governments doing something, and then if it's not substantial enough, you ask for ecological funds. Why must it be ecological funds first? So this is what we are talking about. The NEMA has enough rights to share from time to time. So the funds that are coming from somewhere. So why can't we use them for what they are supposed to be used for? That is my question. In 2012, when about 21 states were flooded, I was in Lokoja and saw some of these things. One of the schools where people were housed, displaced persons, it was the same thing. People came, say officials of government came with cameras, media crew, just rigmarole the people and then move those things away. So people are profiting from these things. The ecological funds are supposed to, come in to address, the disasters that states cannot manage. But the question is, are these disasters, the kind we are seeing, the kind of disasters that states cannot manage? What of the preemptive measures? Right. Those are simple things. Now, it has happened in Niger State. The rains have kicked in. It rained overnight here in Lagos. Now, what are we seeing? Are we hearing jingles on radio and efforts to get people to move from areas where there's a likelihood that we're going to have heavy flooding?
Yes, some state governments have been speaking about the fact that people need to move from floodplains and move to higher zones. But in taking proactive steps and in putting measures in place, where are the gaps and what should we do as it stands? From the statements we are getting out of Mokwa, Niger State, we hear that relief materials have not necessarily gotten to the people because of the damage done, the gullies. As much as possible, emergency response cannot reach the people as quickly as they want. But from your perspective, because you've been harping on the need for proactive steps to be taken, that the government needs to have done something, this is avoidable. Where do we begin? What should we do? What are the policy gaps that we must close moving forward?
So you have said something. I think 3 bridges were affected in the case of Niger State, what we're talking about today. So that is where you have organizations like NEMA moving in with choppers because they cannot use the roads. Those are the kind of things Nigerians want to hear. You've moved in with choppers, the relief, we have relief centers that are, because this has been happening every year. So let us have some more formal structures where once the alert goes out, you tell people to move to those places. And those places are set up, because what we have in Niger State, for instance, we heard of one primary school, which is not comfortable, which is not, it's just an ad hoc measure. So what you are seeing is ad hoc. We are not seeing, consistent planning, because this has been happening. We have climate change with us. We can't run away from it. It's happening globally. So we should have structures that are resilient enough to be able to save the lives of our people. Look at over 200 and something people. These are family men and women. These are people's children. And then look at the diseases that are likely to follow. Look at the wells that have been inundated. After these waters subside, those wells are going to be poisoned. Buildings that remain standing will have to be pulled down. People will carry those burdens on their own. All these things we are seeing are just cosmetic measures that will not achieve anything. And so the reports we are hearing, yes, people are saying relief has not gotten to them, because the agencies of government that are supposed to think proactively and know what to do are busy, talking about sharing rice. So the point here is that we have to look at, this whole thing holistically. What has been the response? What is the response to the yearly flooding? It happens every year. So now it is something that we should always plan for. It is not what we wait for. Internet gives a warning, and then one disaster happens somewhere, people start running helter-skelter. There should be, sustained, efforts to ameliorate the plight of people. Shelters we talked about, there should be more formal structures in virtually all the states where you have these incidents every year. Have them there so that once you stay, people should evacuate. You are telling them where they should go to. So what happens in the West, that these people travel to, they see things work well, and they come to their country and make a mess of their own country. That's what happens when the Coast Guards or the U.S. authorities are telling people to evacuate. They tell them where to go to. They have improved to the point where they won't designate some hotels and say people should go to those hotels. They have what it takes to cook their food and everything. So it is not this crude approach that we are, it's just about sharing bags of rice. That's all. Mm-hmm. Go and find out what is happening in those places. It's all about bags of rice that will disappear. They're not thinking. So what the state government is telling us, as far as I'm concerned, it goes nowhere. They are not telling us what we want to hear. Mm. They are not talking 21st century. They are speaking like they're talking to little children. Proactive measures. What happened? Because the rumors are going around that one dam was affected. Is that the truth? Let us hear what is happening in that place. Because the waters, like I said, the way the waters rushed, the way the videos that are trending, it shows that it may not just be waters rising. Because if it was just waters rising, people can easily see that the waters are rising and move. But the speed we saw shows that it may be something else. So they should be telling us that. Okay. The Allow Dam last year, what has happened? What is the progress in its repair? Mm. Now, there's the likelihood that in Lagdo Dam may also open, the authorities will open the Lagdo Dam if there's the likelihood that it's going to breach. What are the Nigerian authorities doing in terms of engaging them and preparing our people?
All right, sir, just because we have very little time to do this, let's quickly throw in this question. NIMET had identified about 16 states in Nigeria that will experience very heavy rainfall. Will you recommend that the Mokwa case is a wake-up call for those states, and they have the chance to do what Niger State couldn't do, that's proactive planning? Would you say that? Number two, Mr. President had asked security organizations to go to Niger State and help with the relief effort there. How do you react to that?
These are knee-jerk approaches. We've had wake-up calls every year since 2012. The state governments are doing nothing. There's no synergy between NEMA and SEMA, and then there are disaster capitalists who are benefiting from these things, or else they will do something. I ask some pertinent questions now, and I think we should ask those questions. What is the status of Allow Dam? When Lagdo Dam was built in the late 70s, Nigeria was supposed to build buffer dams down the line so that when they release waters there, we don't have destruction on the Nigerian part of the region. what is the status of the Nigerian dams that were supposed to be built. The Senate mentioned one or two things, I think last year or 2 years ago, that they were trying to know the status. We don't know. After that, we didn't hear anything again. So it just shows us as a people who are not serious, who are waiting for a major disaster that will affect all of us before we wake up. That is what is happening here.
It's unfortunate.
Well, quite insightful one that you've done there. But if you look at all of this, you've mentioned the issue of rise. At least they will need water to, flush it down. But it has now affected the potable water supply that they have there, if they even have any to start with. How do you think this would, further cause problem for them when it comes to disease, the outbreak of disease? What can they do to address this issue very quickly? Because as they're providing shelter for them, giving them, so-called rise, and then what about the water and the likelihood of outbreak of disease?
It will seem, except we see some very, very concrete speed, it will seem inevitable. We have mentioned the issue of likely poisoned wells. We are hearing reports of dead bodies, being dug up from different places. Nobody has even talked about cemeteries, that there's the likelihood that some cemeteries might have also been inundated. And then the corpse will be struggling with human bodies for space. A lot can go wrong, except we see some very, very deliberate actions on the part of the government. We've been reading it, that these are the things happening. But I think what you guys are doing is the right thing, because you are not just, regurgitating what the state government is saying, but deploying media people on ground to ask people what is happening. That is how to get the truth about what is happening. We've heard the number 153. Personally, I don't believe it. And the average Nigerian out there will always double those figures, because we've seen it, that there's always this knee-jerk approach. So governments should do what they need to do. And those who are responsible for taking actions that they refuse to or do not do it properly should be held to account. Since we've been having all these floodings, dam collapse, like the one of Vala last year, before that dam collapse, some people may have warned, or somebody may not have warned. Did we see any action in terms of holding people to account? Since people are not held to account, it is to your turn to Israel for all Nigerians. As far as I'm concerned, most of these people are affected in Mokwa are going to bear the burdens by themselves. And don't forget, that's also the food belt. So you are going to have, food crisis, even in that region and beyond. So as far as I'm concerned, seriousness, holding people to account, proactiveness. We've said this year in and year out. So there's nothing I'm saying here that I and others have not said before.
All right. Speaking about holding people to account, because I was wondering who should be held accountable at this point and who should be doing the accountability, pushing forward this matter of accountability, and also speaking with government on the necessary steps being taken with regards to ensuring the integrity of our dams and every other thing regarding climate change. I feel that environmentalists seemingly have failed regarding this. They have not been speaking and possibly not holding state governments to account and federal government pushing laws that should ensure that or keep the government on their toes. What do you think?
I feel like a broken record, like I said, since 2012, when I visited Lokoja and some other places. I was in Port Harcourt when, the community I visited was inundated. Even the vehicle.
Did you speak with state governments?
Floated.
Yeah.
We have been talking. This is a TV station. They are watching these things. We have been issuing statements. We have been talking. They know these things. But like I mentioned, I think we're people who are very, 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 very happy to quickly move on. We just want to forget what has happened. Within the next few weeks, everybody's going to forget this and then move on. So that's why year in, year out, when between March and August, September, October, we cry, oh, this is happening. People have died, livelihood lost. By December, we are all eating and drinking. By March, we start raising the alarm again. So it's people, Nigerians always want to move on quickly. So that's why, like I said, these things happen. We must hold people to account. The Ministry of Water Resources should tell us what is happening, for instance. It is the responsibility of the Ministry of Water Resources to tell us the integrity of the dams, working with the states.
Okay.
And the National Assembly should do their work of oversight properly.
We'll have to leave the conversation here because of time. Philip Jakpor, Executive Director, Renewable Development Initiative. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We'll take a breather now. When we return, we'll be moving over to the Federal Capital Territory for FCT Brief. Stay with us.